Hi, friend. Time for you too to create your dream life in midlife. This is all about connecting with your loved ones and to update your skills to communicate. There's so much new research on how to do this in an effective way, and we can really benefit from looking at what we know today and we didn't know before. In the research for this episode, I read this amazing book regarding communication. It's called Supercommunicators by Charles Duhigg. It's a really great book and I recommend it. I have it linked below if you'd like to read it. But I'll tell you about three very important concepts that he talks about in this book that I think are so powerful. I now use them all the time, and it's changed a lot when you are communicating with your close ones and also with other people. There are easy hacks to use. You don't need to take notes. If you like, you can download this PDF I created regarding this episode so you can get a checklist with the different hacks so you can use them directly. I have a link down below for the checklist as well. But let's start from the beginning. Communication is our superpower as human beings. We are so good at communicating. And probably we are super communicators in some areas of our lives with some people we really connect with. But you can learn how to become a super communicator much more often or perhaps all the time if you have a few techniques in mind when you are trying to come across to another person. One thing they have seen about super communicators is that they ask a lot of questions. And they don't just ask any question, they ask the right questions. They ask questions to invite you for discussion, but they also ask questions, deep questions, questions regarding why we do something, why we made the choices we made, and so forth. And those are questions that really connect us humans together. So those deep questions are important when connecting. Another thing is also that you invite for connection. You need to let other people know that you want to connect, that you want to have conversations with them. So it's really important to show that in different ways. And it can be easy ways like laughter about something that isn't really funny, just laughter to show that you are on the same page and that you are trying to connect. Or with questions, thoughtful questions, of course, you can start that connection with somebody. Another thing he talked about in the book was regarding preparation, especially if you're going to have a hard conversation or if you have teenagers or young adults at home and there might be a little bit of a tension and you know that you're going to have a conversation. You can prepare for that conversation a little bit. Just a few seconds. Think about what you want to say and where you want this conversation to go. It's really powerful for calming us down and making us more focused. We don't really have to go in that direction in this discussion. We just have this as our own preparation. So those are two powerful things that you can do to prepare for a discussion. And then when you are in a discussion, it's important that you understand what kind of conversation you have. A big problem can be when we are having different conversations and we're not really connecting. We are talking about different things. And I think this part of the book was so interesting. And it's regarding the type of conversations we usually have. He talked about 3 categories of conversations. One is a practical conversation, and that conversation could be regarding solving practical issues that we are planning together, we are planning the day, or we are solving a dilemma at home. It's a problem solving discussion. And I think we can relate to that in our relationships, that somebody is having a practical discussion regarding something that is not practical for another, because another person might have another version of this conversation, which is an emotional conversation. And it might be that you come home from work and you are really upset about something, and you start explaining to your spouse, for instance, regarding this thing, and your spouse is having a practical reaction to this. Oh, you can do this and you can solve it in this way. But you were not looking for practical advice. You were having this emotional conversation, an emotional conversation where you would like to be somebody to see you and confirm your emotions. You don't need a solution. You just need to vent your emotions regarding this to another person. It's a completely different discussion. And then we have the third type of conversation, which is the social conversation regarding our social context that we could have with perhaps a group of friends, or in a context where we discuss our larger society and social issues. And that is another conversation altogether as well. A very interesting fact about these 3 different conversations is that we use different parts of our brain for these conversations. The first one, if we're having a practical conversation, is usually our prefrontal cortex that we need to solve these kind of issues. If we are having this deep emotional discussion, then usually we use the amygdala in our deep brain for this. It's another part. And then if we have this social discussion, we are using the peripheral network in our brain. So it's also another part of the brain. And one thing we do when we have connection and we have conversations is that we align with each other. We can align our breath and we can align our heart rates, and we can align our thinking patterns. And if we're using different parts of our brains for this, we can't align. We can't even meet in those kind of discussions. So it's really important to understand what kind of discussion or conversation am I in, and to listen carefully to the other person to understand where they are going with this conversation. And also to be really clear yourself about what kind of conversation are you having, or do you need to have? Perhaps you have to clear something emotional first before you get to this practical part. So this is also really strong tool to use to understand why you might not connect at some point with people. The third one is also a really powerful tool. This tool is called looping for understanding, and it's sort of a method to use to connect with other people. This is a method taught at universities and so forth. This is something that's widely spread and very powerful to use at home with your loved ones as well. And looping for understanding means that you, for instance, pose a deep question, and it doesn't matter which kind of conversation you have, you can use this method anyway. But it's even more useful, perhaps, if you're in a conflict situation and you really need to understand a completely different point of view. You need to create a connection to be able to discuss with somebody of a completely different viewpoint than your own. So you start with a deep question, and then you listen really carefully to the answer. You're not going to think about what you are going to say. You're going to listen to the other person and try to understand what they mean, because you're going to paraphrase this in your own words and ask them if you understood it correctly. And this is key, that you explain what you heard and you ask them if that was correct. And this has two really important consequences when you do this, because one part is that the other person really feel heard, and the other person is heard by you because you have been able to paraphrase it, but also that they can hear their own words, and they might, when they hear them, be able to explain even better or understand themselves even better. Say, oh, but I didn't really mean it like this. I understood that I said it like that, but I meant, for instance. And that means that you can come even further in this discussion. And one other key thing with this is that you are really present. To be able to do that and listen in that way, you need to be really present. It's really important to create connection. You need to be really present in that conversation. These are three really strong hacks that you can use right away, and I guarantee you they will make a difference right away for you. So download this checklist where I have written down all of these different hacks and how you can use them for you to start creating new habits in your way of having conversations today. See you soon, friend.